The United States and other Western countries are losing the race with China to develop advanced technologies. What's even more revealing, Beijing potentially can establish a monopoly in some areas of important tech. This is the latest findings from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, nicknamed ASPI, who conducted a year-long project and found that China now leads in 37 of 44 technologies that are going to be vital for the future of our world. China now leads in fields such as electric batteries, hypersonics, and advanced radio communications, while the United States leads fields in such as vaccines, which by the way is something that not all Americans are happy about, quantum computing, and space launch systems. This report is quite remarkable. First, it's published by ASPI, which has a history of usually being very anti-China, but when it comes to technology and China's innovation advantage, ASPI has no other option but to reveal the truth of the situation. Look at this major takeaway. For some technologies, all of the world's top 10 leading research institutions are based in China and are collectively generating 9 times more high-impact research papers than the second-rate country, which is most often the United States. Honestly, this report is quite revealing. I was even surprised to learn the Chinese Academy of Sciences ranked first or second in most of the 44 technologies that were tracked in this report. But this dominant lead by China shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. In fact, this has all been part of a deliberate plan of strategic planning by Xi Jinping and his predecessors. But why does China have an innovation advantage over the United States? In doing my research for today's video, I came across this article published by the Harvard Business Review entitled China's New Innovation Advantage. The article was written by Zach Dykveld, the author of Young China, How the Restless Generation Will Change Their Country and the World. In the article, Zach makes a compelling argument that China has an innovation advantage due to a shift in the aging demographics of its population. Let me explain. 50 years ago, China was a poor agrarian economy. And over the past 5 decades, we've witnessed the greatest example of poverty alleviation, with China establishing itself as a manufacturing powerhouse and lifting some 700 million people out of poverty and into the middle class. But let's be honest, China's economic boom didn't come from innovation. Fueled by an endless supply of cheap labor, China's boom came from the production of other countries' innovations. Just last week, I met a retired American toy executive who first started manufacturing American toys in Asia in the 1970s. When China opened to the world under Deng Xiaoping, Western companies were eager to enter China and establish new factories and tap into this endless supply of cheap Chinese labor. But as this retired toy executive taught me, it was a process. In the beginning, Chinese made toys lack quality, but within a very short amount of time, Chinese factories and their workers began to refine their skills, and their products eventually had the best quality-price ratio in the entire world. Over the next 4 decades, most of the Western world shifted their production facilities to China to take advantage of this amazing ratio. But now, times are changing. China has one of the fastest growing elderly populations, and its workforce is being replaced by millennials, born under the One China policy. The One Child policy officially launched in 1979 and stopped China's dramatically rising population. But now, China doesn't have enough youth to replace its disappearing baby boomers. By 2030, China will have 81 million fewer workers than in 2015. But once again, and this is important to understand, China knew this and saw it coming. It's why Xi Jinping and his predecessors for many years have focused on shifting China away from being a manufacturer and instead learning to become the world leader in innovation. However, many in the West fail to see this pivot from China. Look at this 2014 article from the Harvard Business Review entitled Why China Can't Innovate, which at the time of publishing captured the collective groupthink of most Westerners towards China. China can't innovate. All they can do is imitate. The authors of this article gave a variety of reasons to support their hypothesis. They stated that most of China's companies are founded by engineers. Therefore, they aren't creative enough. They blame the education system in China, stating that Gaokao, which is China's 2-day-long college entrance examination, was giving students too much pressure and therefore stifling innovation. And finally, they blame China's government as a reason China could never become an innovator. But just 2 years later, 8 of the 10 fastest companies to reach a $1 billion valuation were Chinese, and 6 of those 8 were founded in 2014, the same year that Harvard Business Review article was published. Fast forward to 2018, and tech journalist Eva Yao wrote, "The number of Chinese unicorns, which are startups with more than a $1 billion valuation, are growing so fast that later we might have to change the term to dragons in the future. So what exactly happened in China in 2014 that spurred the country in a completely new direction and transformed China into an innovation powerhouse? Once again, author Zach Dykvald presents his theory. To understand what's powering the global rise of Chinese companies, we need to recognize that China now has at its disposal a resource that no other country has, a vast population that has lived through unprecedented amounts of change and consequently has developed an astonishing propensity for adopting and adapting to innovations at a speed and scale that is unmatched elsewhere on Earth. Zach brings up an incredible point in his analysis. Innovations must be judged by people's willingness to use them, and Chinese people adapt and adopt new technologies faster than any other population on the planet. I was in China in 2012 when one of my Chinese clients came up to me and told me to download this new app for my phone called Weixin, or WeChat in English. While I was downloading the app, I literally had no idea that this new messaging app would single-handedly transform the entire country of China. Almost overnight, seemingly every Chinese person I knew was immediately using WeChat. And after downloading the app, I opened it, and within a few minutes, my Chinese client became my first contact on WeChat. Moments later, this client sent me a voice message, and I still remember how strange and foreign this concept felt to me. 10 years ago, everybody sent text messages. The thought of sending a voice message was completely strange to me. I remember hitting the play button and thinking to myself, why would anybody send me a voice message? This is so weird. But that's because I'm an American, and in my culture, we are not used to rapid change. But everywhere around me, every Chinese person was sending and receiving voice messages. Once again, almost overnight, the Chinese instantly adapted and adopted this new way of communication as part of their daily lives. Now, over 6.1 billion voice messages are sent on WeChat every single day. WeChat has now grown to over 1.3 billion monthly active users, and even China's elderly population have embraced the technology change. 98.5% of smartphone users between the age of 50 and 80 are active users on China's WeChat. In my previous video, I highlighted the role of young Chinese, those born after 1990, who are not only going to shape the future of China, but also set global trends, disrupt industries, and change the entire future of our world. In China, there are over 700 million people under the age of 40, and all of them have lived through one of the greatest technological transformations ever witnessed in human history. The World Bank came up with this graph entitled the Lived Change Index, which measures the amount of change in capita per GDP someone has experienced in their lifetime. As an American millennial who was born in the 1980s, my generation of Americans have experienced a GDP per capita increase of 3 times in my lifetime. An excellent number that shows impressive growth for America, but wait till you hear how much China has grown. Chinese youth have experienced a 33-time increase in GDP per capita in their lifetime. They've literally been a part of the biggest tech transformation in human history and have lived in the fastest changing country in the world for their entire lives. And this is the secret as to why China is adapting so quickly and becoming the top country in the world for innovation. This is what Chinese people have been trained to do, and it has become a way of life for them. In 1990, China's GDP represented less than 2% of global total, but by 2022, China's GDP accounts for 18.6% of the entire global economy. So the next time you hear the phrase, China can't innovate, China is simply a copycat nation, let me share with you the insights from Tim Cook, the Apple CEO who just last week visited Beijing to attend the China Development Forum and reaffirm Apple's commitment to China. There are 2 reasons that Apple became the most valuable company in the world. Number 1, Apple makes the most innovative products. And number 2, Apple chooses to manufacture those products in the most innovative place on earth. Just listen to Tim Cook. There's a confusion about China. The popular conception is that companies come to China because of low labor cost, but China stopped being the low labor cost country many years ago. The reason Apple is in China is because of the skill and the quantity of skill in one location. The products we make require really advanced tooling, and the precision that you have to have is state of the art. In the US, you could have a meeting of tooling engineers, and I'm not sure we could fill the room. In China, you could fill multiple football fields. Times have changed. Now when you read the Harvard Business Review, you'll see new articles like this published in March 2023, How Chinese Companies Are Reinventing Management. The article tells the story of how Chinese companies have long been acclaimed for their manufacturing prowess and their innovation, but now Chinese staff are given an enormous amount of autonomy to make decisions with the help of digital tools at a gigantic scale. Harvard Business Review has come full circle on China. 10 years ago, it was publishing articles stating that China doesn't know how to innovate. Today, they are publishing articles teaching lessons in Chinese management in hopes that American firms can learn and improve their own operations. And this is something that I've been advocating for many years now. China is having a larger role in our global economy, and it's imperative that we study, learn, and understand China. But most importantly, we need to learn to work with China because it's China who is inventing the future technologies that will change our world. Look at this SCMP article which highlights China will be introducing early 6G mobile applications by 2025 with the commercial rollout of 6G services by 2030. This is at a time when the United States and our Western allies are still struggling to build out a reliable 5G network. As I've proven in today's video, China has an innovation advantage, and as a result, Chinese millennials, not American millennials, are going to be the ones setting trends and changing the future of our world. If you haven't already seen our episode on China's rising youth, click here and watch that video. And thank you for spending time with me here today on YouTube. I appreciate all of your continued support, and I look forward to seeing you all in our next video soon.